We are a part of the Mental Health News Radio Network.
You've tuned in to Rescue the Rescuer, the show that focuses on helping first responders who may be experiencing challenges such as addiction, PTSD, relationship failure, and more. We use stories of struggle and recovery to highlight successful survival strategies for those in this powerfully stressful field of work. And now, here's your host, Steven Kavalkovich.
Hey everyone, this is Steven. Thanks for joining me on the show. I'm a former paramedic in long-term recovery from addiction and post-traumatic stress disorder. I've created this podcast to help others who may be experiencing a story similar to mine find a path beyond their problems and towards a life that they deserve. Before we get started with today's episode, let's hear this short message from one of my supporters. Putting together this show has been amazing, but I couldn't have done it without the help of my producer. James Healy and the wonderful team over at McLean Media has been instrumental in helping me get the show off the ground and my message of healing to you. If you are like me and want to start your own podcast or write a book, but have no idea where to begin and are completely overwhelmed, you are in good hands. Give James a call today or set up a free discovery session and learn how you can quickly and easily get your powerful and important message out to those who need it. Head on over to recoveryinnovators.com for all the details. All right, thanks again for joining me, and let's get started with today's show. So I have a special treat for you guys today on this episode. I've got Marty Mayes here. Marty Mayes joined the fire service in 1987 as a volunteer. In 1990, Marty became a full-time police officer with the same city and served as both volunteer firefighter and full-time police officer for the next 10 years. Marty left police work in 2000, but continued to volunteer as a firefighter. He worked in the field of high and private security until 2010 when he was diagnosed with cancer and placed into hospice. After several surgeries and extended treatments, Marty beat cancer like a rented mule. Today, Marty runs his training company called the Fire Asylum, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I welcome you, Marty, to the show. How you doing out there in Texas?
Doing good. I mean, it's 105 in the shade, but, that's Texas for you. We're getting kind of used to it at this point.
Wow, man. Yeah, I'm up in Jersey today and it feels like 105, and I'm happy to be, I'm happy for the modern technology of air conditioning. I don't know what people did without it, but I guess they didn't miss it because they didn't know what they didn't miss. They didn't, you know what I mean?
That's true. I mean, I've, in my later life, I've worked and managed horse ranches, which, obviously requires that I work outside, and it's amazing what the human body can do when it adapts to it. And like when I worked on the ranch, I never got my air conditioner below 85 in the house because it felt so cool. Wow. So, the body can adapt. And we know that as firefighters too. We work in hot environments. But now that I've gotten a little softer and a little bit lazier, sitting in the air conditioner does feel good.
Sure. Well, it's interesting. You started off on a good note about adaptability. I can never say the word. And that's kind of I guess it coincides with what your training program is, and also about what your story is. So I want to, I like to go right into it.
All right, let's jump in.
Yeah, I was really honored to have gotten hooked up with you. I love what you're doing out there. But so before we even get into what you've actually started, the mission that you've got going on now, let's go back. Let's go back to a little bit of background about who you are. I gave the bio, but say it in your own words a little bit about who you are, what happened, and what got you on the purpose that you're doing now.
Okay. Well, I think the bio tells the pretty picture. It sounds like a lovely life of volunteering as a fireman for 25 years, working as a police officer, transitioning to high-end private security bodyguard type work, which is very flashy in and of itself. People think you've lived this charmed life, but for me, you know, if you're going to get the whole picture of who I am, then we have to address the ugly sides too, and the things that made me not such a good man and not such a pretty picture. But in 1987, I joined the volunteer fire service. I followed in my older brother's footsteps. We volunteered on the same fire department for many years, and little local community I grew up in. I really grew up in what would be the quintessential Mayberry equivalent of Texas, a little town called River Oaks, Texas.
Okay.
Uh, a good 20 years behind the times in all shape, form, and fashion. A nice little community to grow up in. Everybody knew everybody, even though we sat right in the middle of the big city of Fort Worth. Um, just this little microcosm, the volunteer fire department was the place to be. If you have any listeners that are from the older school volunteer fire service, they understand exactly what I'm talking about. It was the place to be on a Friday night, family, friends, everybody. And
Yeah,
I wanted to be a
everybody
part of
hung
that.
out. Everybody hung out at the firehouse. Sure, sure.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to be a part of that. I had seen it as my brother went through volunteering there. I mean, we literally lived right across the street from the fire station as a child. So, growing up, seeing the guys, with the big whistle going off, this is well before pagers and tone outs and the beepers and staffing stations and all that kind of stuff was in play like it is nowadays. This was, they set off the big fire whistle and the firemen just come running down the street, and it was all very exciting, and it was all very thrilling to me, and I really wanted to be a part of it. And so I joined and, embarked on this journey of not knowing what I didn't know. The things that they don't tell you is there's a price of admission for doing that kind of work, and
Yeah.
that price of admission started leaving pretty deep seated. And I hesitate to even call them scars nowadays, because scars really it infers a type of injury that has healed over, but it was a pretty serious injury. I tend to look at the price of admission for being a firefighter or a police officer as opportunities for me to grow. They would it would kind of leave you open and raw and emotional, and I had the opportunity to grow as a man, and of course that's what I did. I grew up in the fire service. I joined at 18, um, naive as to the way the world worked and the ugly side of humanity. To, like I said, put the juxtaposition to what I told you about growing up in this little town. Well, the little town has an underbelly, and that is the calls and stuff that we go on as firefighters. And then, 3 years later, when I joined the police force, and then really started seeing the seedier side of your next door neighbor.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so um, that kind of started really influencing me a lot as a person, and I started changing. Um, I kind of dropped the rose colored glasses about the work. At the end of the day, what it came down to, I was really good at it, and it really fulfilled me. But I always was left with some kind of emotional connection to the cause that I couldn't seem to drop or let go of. And we've all been there. You've been on the decapitations, or you've been there when somebody has beat their wife into the ground, and you've got to arrest him, and then that turns into a fight between you guys, and it's just this kind of a violent, raw thing. And those left, pretty indelible marks on me. And unfortunately, as I've educated myself in life now, and I've come to understand, is that I always had a brain that was going to be prone to addiction.
Is that
And
when you say that? Is that because of the environment you grew up in, or?
no, I've come to believe through the research that I've done and the education I've had through incredible counselors and doctors in my life, as I've put myself back on the right track. You know, that is really a physical abnormality in my brain. How I react to alcohol or a pill is quite different from the man standing next to me.
Okay.
And you know, um, and through the study of stuff I've done, which we'll get into with the work we're doing in the Fire Asylum, with the training there and stuff, with the human brain and the neuroscience, and just to put all my cards on the table, I barely have a high school education. I am no doctor. Um, I am no researcher, but I can read papers and I can understand them, and I can look at the science and understand it for what it is. And as I enjoyed the thrill and I enjoyed the reward that the fire service and the police work and all these things brought to my personal spirit, And when that was kind of jerked under, my brain started looking for other ways to reward my brain for doing the work, quite frankly.
Hmm.
And I allowed that to follow down a path where it ended up with alcoholism and an addiction to pain pills. And so
Did you was the pain pills, did they come as a result of an injury, or was it just something to add to the cocktail of whiskey or whatever you were drinking?
well, yeah, oh yeah, whiskey was the preferred modus operandi for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
But you know,
not to discriminate, but I figured Texas whiskey
yeah,
was
yeah.
probably at play. I don't know.
And and I'm a few generations removed from Ireland in as Texas transplants, so I have a deep Irish history. I often make the joke because my dad's side of the family is Cherokee Indian and my mother's all Irish. I was pretty much born an alcoholic. So
I gotcha.
um, Jameson's and these whiskeys were always there for certain. But I think, to get back directly to the question about where was pain medication introduced into my life and how I reacted to it, there's no way to do firefighting and police work consistently over a number of years that you don't turn an ankle, you don't break a wrist, you don't, uh, you know,
Yeah, like twist a
get
back or
twist a
something.
back, get thrown
Yeah.
to the ground by a suspect and wrench your back out. All these different things. In firefighting, there's a plethora of injuries that one can sustain, and so you're correctively prescribed the medication by a doctor in good faith. Everything's above board. The problem I had is from the first time those particular drugs entered my body, I had a completely opposite reaction to it than this is good for pain. My body said this is good for standing up all night cleaning the house. You
Me
know,
too. Me too.
yeah, exactly. It was a completely wrong because my brain sought the reward. My brain was still looking for that reward that I had lost through losing the love of the work. Even though I was still very much called to do the work itself, and I was very good at it. Um, I don't think anybody could disparage that part of my reputation is that if you called me to chase down a suspect as a policeman, I caught him. If you called me to your house fire, it got put out. I mean, I was good at my work and I was surrounded by amazing professionals who were very good at their work as well. Even in this little small community, I was surrounded by some of the best in the business. There's no two ways about it. But so and then it culminated in 1997. I got into a fight with a suspect. We fought over my weapon, and I ended up getting shot in the chest.
Wow.
Uh, and so that unlike the movies, people like to show the tough guy movies when people get hit in a bulletproof vest. I took it in my bulletproof vest, and people like see this thing where the guy pops up off the ground. He's like, "Oh, you didn't get me. I have my vest on." Well, it pretty much shattered my ribs, collapsed a lung. It did a lot of damage, and you know, uh, and from then on, that really kind of cemented in my brain some real trauma. Obviously, and it was some trauma at that time. And this is no disparagement to my hierarchy at the time. People back in the '90s didn't know what they didn't know about how to help a police officer or a firefighter who was just struggling. Because what happened at that point was I used to describe it as I lost my love for police work, and that's not true. I was now afraid of it, and I'd never been afraid to go to work.
Yeah, well, I mean,
And
after going through something so traumatic, I'm sure it makes perfect sense.
yeah, so that fear just started eating me alive, and from that point forward, for the next couple of years, my addiction really spiraled out of control. You know, um, on face value, you could look at me and say everything was held together, and then of course, as you've heard within AA and the stuff others, functional alcoholics, there's no such thing. I was not functioning. I was just a really good actor.
You
You
were,
know, I,
yeah, good at playing the system just enough until it got to a point where you couldn't hide it anymore.
right. I couldn't hide it, anymore. And at that point, as we all know in hindsight from our stories of getting sober, at that point, I was really reaching out for help, but I was doing it through bad behavior. But what I was really screaming for was somebody stop me because I can't stop myself at this point. You know, and so it came down to a point where I had severely compromised my own integrity. Um, just to say it frankly, and I don't mind sharing this part of my story, even though it is always personally embarrassing. But I want to know if anybody. I don't want to. I want people to know out there, if they hear this part of my story, that they're not alone. Yeah, I compromised it to a point where I stole some pain pills from a neighbor, and at that point, there's obviously a confrontation that needs to take place, a intervention, as they call it nowadays. A sexy term for it is intervention, but it's a
Sure. Yeah.
confrontation where you're confronted with your actions. Um, Luckily for me, there was enough integrity somewhere down deep. I felt so bad about it over that night. The very next morning, I sit down with my parents, who we sit down with my fire chief at the time, and laid all my cards on the table. Uh, we decided as a group the best course of action was to report it to the police outright. We did that, put everything above board, and I pretty much threw myself on the mercy of anybody. And not because I was doing something so magnanimous, like, yeah, I'm going to throw myself on the mercy and I'm going to fess up to my crime. Quite frankly, Stephen, I was so tired and I was so worn out and I needed help and I had no way to figure out how to do it. I just said, something's got to help me, and I don't care what it is.
Yeah, you were at
You
that
know,
desperation point where you just wanted it to stop, and the circumstances actually lend themselves to that happening, I guess.
right. And it's not a pretty part of my story. I mean, you read my bio, it sounds wonderful, but that's not the whole story, even though I had a wonderful career, you know. And so uh, without a doubt, by the grace of God, the victim said on her own accord, if you will get help, there will be no charges. And that's what I went and did. And I got sober.
Wow, and that just to get the audience to know, when was that?
That would have been in 2000.
Okay, so that's 2000. We're 17 years later. What's your life been like since that time?
Well, since then, I continued along in sobriety. I did not educate myself enough in 2000. In 2004, I had a minor relapse to which I took 30 days to go to rehab and get sober again.
Okay.
Off of it came on the heels of another traumatic incident, and I hesitate to always throw these examples out there because I don't lean on that trauma being the cause, because my addiction is something that I should be working on all the time, interact with or without there being a causation factor, i.e., something traumatic happening. But I was still in the volunteer fire department. Um, we got a call of a officer involved accident. Apparently, two of our patrol officers were in a high speed pursuit. Uh, Not going into the details about how that unfolded, but one officer broadsided another officer, what by all indications, right at 100 miles an hour in his passenger door in a residential neighborhood, and it killed the police officer who did the broadsiding. And of course, as you can imagine, severely injured the other police officer. Um,
Hmm.
After working that particular call, which was a very hard call, because um, it set a few things personally in perspective for me, because as I was the driver on the fire engine, as we pulled up, this police officer was actually driving my old police car. He was the guy who replaced me on the police department. Um, and so I'm sitting there looking at my ID number, basically sitting on its side. The car had rolled up onto a tree. The other vehicle was about a half a block down, wedged into another tree. Um, so I went home that night. Things weren't right. I drank. I drank for a couple of days. I picked up the phone, called my father, which has always been my greatest support system. By the way, to give perspective on my father, he's a Baptist minister, number one. That's been his calling in life. But my dad also served on the same fire department for 30 years, uh, and was one of my partners as a police officer for several years.
Oh, wow.
We used to ride doubles in the car together. So obviously, my father's somebody. If I pick up the phone and call him, he shows up. And you got brotherhood and family mixed together. My father shows up, and I called him. I said, "Dad, I'm in trouble again. I need help." He showed up, and I checked myself into a center. Luckily, there's enough of the program, enough sobriety in me to know that this wasn't the path I was willing to go back down again for any long term. And so, what I could say from that is from uh, September 2004 till currently, I've been sober.
Okay. So you've been sober now. You've obviously, I read it in the bio. You've dealt with some major life happens, whether you're
Yes, life.
sober, whether you're sober or not, or life still shows up either
Oh
way.
yeah. Well, life showed up really in a heart stopping way in 2010. Um, I had been experiencing a intense amount of pain in my back, and I've been having problems with, in hindsight, everything made sense. And this is really a good thing to talk about too, because I want people to hear this. With mind, body, and spirit have to be in line to maintain sobriety. I had been ignoring my body at the expense of my sobriety, because my loving, wonderful girlfriend at the time was always looking at me. It's like, you need to go to the doctor. You're hurting too bad. And of course, what was my response as a drug addict? I'm a 40-year-old fireman with back pain. They're going to offer me pain pills. I'm not going to take the pain pills. I'm in sobriety, so there's no point in going to the doctor. It's just a tweak back, right? I'll survive. I'm getting older. Things hurt now. It's not a big deal. Well, that really progressed to the point where I ended up in the emergency room. Um, without going into the gory details, I was passing blood out of just about every orifice I could pass blood out of, and in intense amounts of pain, and trying to deal with the emergency room doctor. And going forward, it's very important everybody understands when they ask me, are you allergic to anything in any clinical setting, I always tell them anything addictive. That's the first thing I tell them. And so I had this doctor argue with me saying, look, I really need to get some pain medicine. We can't even straighten you out to do a CAT scan. And we argued back and forth. I said, I'll man up and do the CAT scan. I will lay here perfectly still. And I did it. I said, I'm not willing to take the pain medicine until I know what's wrong with me. So long story short, 11 hours later in the emergency room with all kinds of tests done, the doctor comes back and he asks the question that all of our listeners, if they're in the first responder deal, will recognize. He says, is there any family with you?
Oh, so now you
So
know.
I knew right
Yeah.
then that he had some really bad news. I said, yeah, they're out in the lobby and they brought my girlfriend back, which is I won't use her name on this podcast because we've since gone separate ways in life for very good reasons,
Sure.
loving reasons. I mean, I don't mean to sound anything other than loving, but we're longer together. So, that's her story to tell.
Oh, of
And,
course. Yeah.
she came back with me. She was a wonderful support mechanism. And we sit there and the doctor says, look, he says, I stopped counting in your left kidney at right over 80 kidney stones. And he goes, and that is not your problem.
Wow.
So when a doctor tells you got 80 kidney stones in a kidney and that's not your problem, I said, so what's my problem? He says, you have about a softball sized tumor in your right kidney. He says, I can't tell you have cancer, but you have cancer. He goes, we can't tell you till we take it out and do the pathology on it, but you've got cancer. I said, okay, so what's this mean? I need to go to an oncologist, and what do I need to do? He says, no, sir, we're keeping you in the hospital. He says, we don't think you're going to survive much longer. We're going to try to take that kidney out tonight.
Wow. So you went
So,
in, you're completely within 11 hours, your life completely went upside down.
right. And then I was faced with a much, I know how devastating that would sound to anybody outside the addiction community. Now, the more devastating question was on the table. What do I take for pain?
Mm-hmm.
And I have family sitting next to me saying, hey, you got to take this. They've got to operate on you. They got to do stuff. Now they've got to get to work on you. And one doctor who was a doctor I actually made amends to, by the way, who stayed on as my doctor from 2004. I made an appointment, made amends to him way back then, who worked in the program. He came to the hospital, to see me personally. He had taken care of me all these years post addiction treatment from 2004. And he said, Marty, he goes, I can always help you fix your addiction, but we can't help you fix cancer unless you let us get you on the operating table and get you relaxed. And I got to tell you, Stephen, I was terrified, but I took the medicine. And I learned a pretty valuable lesson is that when you take the medicine for the right reasons under strict care, things are different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things were just different. And I was so grateful that real sobriety had and that spiritual change had taken place at that point within my body to allow me to be treated. So anyway, going back to the story, the surgeons come down. The surgeons look at me and the surgeon says, well, we're going to send you home. I said, well, this other doctor said this. He goes, well, the other doctor's not a surgeon. He's an emergency room doctor. And he says, we don't think you're healthy enough to even operate on. And comes from this wonderful bedside manner. He said, this was October, by the way. He says, if you live past Christmas, come back and see me and I'll consider taking it out.
Wow. Isn't
And,
that?
and I said, what's the reason behind it? He says, you have less than 30% kidney function. He goes, we're 100% believe that if we tried to operate on you, we're going to kill you. So the best thing we can do is take you home, send you home. Hopefully you can pass some of these kidney stones. We can do some work to get your kidney function better. Then maybe we'll consider operating on you, but we don't think there's really anything else we can do. You're too far down the road. So yes, in the course of 20 something hours now at this point, I'm sitting back on my couch, 80 Vicodin sitting on the counter, hospice news. They're starting to send all this paperwork to how they're going to treat you for hospice for the next years. And I'm just devastated because that's not the way I planned on going. And so I sat with it for a while and I prayed and talked to my sponsor, talked to the people in the program, and one word came to my mind, and it's a word that never left me, and the word was no. It's not how I'm doing it. I've been in sobriety too long to have to die in a place where this stuff is in my body. And I think you would understand it. Anybody in real sobriety would understand what I'm saying. This is not how it's going to end.
Yeah.
And so I went and sat at the doctor's office until he would come out to the lobby and talk to me for the next 3 days. It took a few days to get him to actually come out and talk to me, the surgeon. And I said, go ahead and operate on me. I said, what's the difference between me dying now or dying in a month? Let's do this. And he said, okay, well, that's your decision. And so he set some time aside, and on Thanksgiving Day, because he had to fit me into his schedule, so he did it on a holiday. They took my kidney out, and I'm still trying to figure out what Christmas I'm not supposed to live past all this years now.
Wow. And that was 2010?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, and I would love to hear more detail about everything you went through, but I definitely want to, I want to fast forward a little bit so we can get to what you're doing now to help
Oh, certainly,
others.
certainly. Yeah.
But 2010, you got your kidney out. I assume you went on to chemo and dealt with the cancer. Where are you at now as far as that goes?
I am 100% cancer free. I am not even in what they consider remission. I'm 100% cancer free.
Wow. So you went down that journey. You said no. You made a stand. You got a doctor to do, something that he might not have done because, you believed it and he was willing to go with you. And today you stand or you sit on their couch talking to me right now,
Right.
alive and healthy because you said I'm not going out that way.
And this is one of those weird turn of events, and I know we want to get to the Fire Asylum, and
Sure.
after this we can turn that corner. But this is one of those weird turns where you look at people in the face, you say, "That's why I'm grateful for my addiction," because it wasn't the fact that I didn't want to die of cancer. I simply did not want to die with medicine in me.
Wow, that's
You know,
that I gotta sit and let that marinate here for a second. That's a really, really interesting point.
because sobriety had meant that much to me over the years because that spiritual change had taken place, and I knew what it was like to live in freedom from it. And it's like, these are not the chains I'm dying in. You can take me out any other way. When we're policemen, we're firemen, we expect to get taken out at some point. Or not expect it. We just understand there's the realistic possibility that a fire can get us or a bullet can get us, right?
Of course, yeah.
Right. But there's no way I was letting my body go with the medicine that put my path in a very bad place at one point in my life. It just wasn't going to happen.
So yeah, I mean, obviously 180 degrees because I imagine you're a lot like me when I was at the end of my addictive behavior, which was, it would turn from opiate pills to heroin for myself. But when I got the end, I was so desperate. I wanted it to end either way. Like either
Right.
I'm going to get better or I want to die now because I don't want to,
Right.
I don't want to live in this anymore. So now that thing that got you to that place is now the thing that actually saved your life.
That's how I view it. And that's when people will give you that, the little cross-eyed look like a dog does and cock their head when you say, I'm always grateful for having an addiction. And of course, it expands way beyond that because as we get into the Fire Asylum work and we get into those things, you're going to see how that's what has allowed me the platform that we have, and it's allowed me the life. I've met wonderful, amazing people, in this world. And it's because this was the path I went down. I would never know you guys,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know?
you and I would certainly not be having this conversation if you and I decided not to take a stand
Right.
and use that thing that was our greatest weakness and turn it into our greatest strength.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, I always, people, they tend to hang monikers on addiction and call it demons and stuff like that. And they're trying to get rid of demons. And I tell people, I don't need my demons to go away. I just need them to help me.
Yeah,
You know,
using them as fuel instead of it makes perfect.
right.
Using them fuel. I look at it as using them as fuel to light a fire that people can come and get peace out of, or
Exactly.
however you want to
Yeah.
put it.
Whatever
I didn't
metaphor
say
you want
that
to use,
right,
but
but
yeah, that dog will hunt. Just get him off the porch, Steve.
yeah. So all right, so now let's get into it.
All right.
We got a little bit of time left, so I want to get into what did you turn this thing into now?
Well, of course, as you can understand from my story, I spent about the next 4 years pretty much flat on my back, in the physical battle of a lifetime. We've covered the spiritual battle that took place in that time. And just the physical side of it was a battle. The cancer had actually devastated major body systems, as you can understand. Um, and so it took several years. And as I laid there, I'm an alpha. We're all alphas in this business, and laying
Yes.
on our
Yeah.
backs just doesn't work. And the mental anguish and depression and all that stuff that comes from that, I literally laid there and I prayed to the God that I believe in, and doesn't necessarily be the God that anybody else believes in. But I said, why me? Why are you doing this to me? I did all this good work in sobriety. I did all this stuff. Why am I here? And why am I alone? Not alone in the sense that there wasn't family and there wasn't some friends, but why am I here alone in this headspace having to deal with this? And and I got a pretty clear and concise answer back. It says, because now maybe you'll listen to what I'm asking you to do.
Mm.
And
Wow.
and what was laid on my heart was this company called the Fire Asylum. And um, basically, my vision of it was at the time, and has now manifested exponentially into what it is now, was that there's a real lack of ability to train firemen in ways that these stresses can benefit them, that we go through. The stresses that I mentioned in the very first part of the podcast, have my rose colored veil dropped, and I was like exposed very raw to the stress of the work, and was not prepared for it. I was not prepared in any shape, form, or fashion. And the way I was prepared for it was, if you couldn't do something, you were yelled at, cussed at, slapped around, told you were stupid, get back on the fire truck.
Mm.
You know, and again, it's not disparaging the hierarchy at the time. They didn't know what they didn't know about the human brain and the human soul and the spirit. They were just tough old firemen, and I appreciate them to this day. They were tough old salts and tough old cops. But I saw this real lacking, and what I sought to start doing was, how do I actually introduce the concept to the fire service and anybody else who wants to do it, um, that stress is here to help us, not harm us. We really have gotten tied up on this stuff within the fire service, especially, is that when you experience that kind of a stress, it's automatically goes to disorder. you know and again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to say people have PTSD or don't have PTSD, and I'm not even going to go into splitting the hairs of the definition. That's what doctors do. That's what a psychiatrist diagnoses. But the common belief is, if I experience a decapitation this evening of a child, 5 years old, the kid's decapitated in a car accident, that's immediately supposed to create disorder, and they kind of go down that path. And my vision was, and my thought process was, why? Because the stress we feel in that moment from a calling that we all say we possess, we're called to this kind of work. If not us, then who's called to it? You know what I'm saying? The average Joe just doesn't jump on a fire truck.
Yeah.
This is something you got to want to do, and it's got to be something that your spirit wants to do. So if your spirit's called to it, and there's this traumatic incident, why could that not be an opportunity for you to grow? And why is it not an opportunity? Well, what I come back to time and time again, no matter what angle I looked at it from, was the skill set was not good enough to perform. And when the skill set doesn't perform well under that kind of stress, you look at yourself in the mirror and go, I should have done better. Oh, I should have done this. Oh, I forgot to do that. And then that self deprecating speech comes into the head. It drives that stress down into disorder, and you feel like a failure, even though we all know there was nothing more that could be done at that point. So I wanted to develop a training program style that fostered work performance and skill sets under stress as being the reward system for the brain, not the outcome. Because we're very outcome based in the fire service. If we save a life, it's a win. If we save a fire, it's a win. And you hear people say, oh, that house fire is a loser. Well, it's not a loser. It's just where it is when you show up.
Yeah.
Fit yourself into the chaos of the moment when you show up, start correcting it, start pulling things into line, and implement a full skill set into play. That way you leave nothing on the table. It's all out there. You leave nothing behind. And then you say, I did the best I could, and you really do mean it. you know that's the key to it. You really mean, I did the best I could while I was there, so therefore the outcome was not as important to my spirit and my soul. What are the opportunities I have to grow from this? What did I learn? And you move on to the next job, which then becomes experience, and experience drives survival based memories, which allows us to implement that on the next job. and the next job and the next job. And so you can embark on a career that you continually are in a growth pattern on, not a career that jerks you under every 2 calls, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense to me. So, I mean, you're turning what inherently becomes a liability because, like you said, the tools that we're given aren't necessarily designed to help us handle the actual effect that it has on the human brain and psyche. So
Right.
you're actually turning what inherently is a liability because of what it is and turning it into an asset.
Right. Because at the end of the day, what is the stress based response in the body for? It's to help you survive. So if
Correct.
it's to help you survive, it's not bad. Now the circumstances around you may be bad. If we go all the way back to, the primal drives that have put this into our brain system today for survival, the kind of cliche or default um, example is you're on the African plain and there's a lion chasing you. So your nervous system shuts down, uh, reproduction and digestion and these sort of things because it doesn't need to devote any energy to them because it's not really important that you digest food or have sex at the moment. What's really important is that you can run fast and that you're strong and that your vision's better and that your hearing's better. So if that's what the body's doing for you, then and it's helping you survive that moment. If you fast forward that into the stresses of the fire ground, and we're at this fire, and your body is picking up on the energy that it needs to survive the environment that it's in, and it's producing stress for you. Really and truly, all we have left to shape that moment is our individual choice and emotional content. We get to choose how we view that moment, and we blow right past that little nugget of knowledge so much people forget they have a choice, because the body's doing what the body's supposed to do. It's supposed to help us survive the environment, right? So it's there to help you. So we are choosing a emotional content to assign to it, which either makes it a disordered moment or it makes it an opportunity and growth moment. And I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying this is something that works blanketly. We all know that certain calls are going to affect us certain ways because we're human beings. If we weren't, we would be terrorists. You know what I'm saying? Things affect us. We get that, you know. But then if you process those emotions realistically and honestly with somebody, open up and say, "Hey, Steven, man, that call last night makes me sad." And Steven says, "Come here, brother." It puts his arm around and just let you cry through it. Guess what you've done? You've processed a moment. You've allowed the stress to help you improve your skill set. You move on to the next call, you know. And I'm not saying this is a fix all because, like I said, I'm not a psychologist, but I'm just saying the benefit was from that I saw from it was this skill sets were improving amazingly in huge increments for these firefighters because their brain was seeking the reward in that moment and was saying, if I do this action well, I release a little dopamine into the brain from the midbrain to the forebrain. The forebrain says, hey, this is a pretty good experience. We need to do this again and again and again because we enjoy it. And it throws glutamate back down to the midbrain, completes the neural pathway, and this becomes a definable and repeatable event for that fireman, and it's just training. And he wants to do it over and over and over, which then expands the skill sets. And then when those skill sets are called upon under real stress and an emotionally bankrupt situation that he's faced with, his skill sets take over regardless. And then he feels positive about the call, regardless of what the outcome was. And that's the amazing thing we're going for.
So that essentially is what your the training program is teaching the process to do that. And
Yes,
that's and
we train that process. It's called getting into flow-based decision making, and I will make sure I mention her name here, Dr. Judy Glicksmith, which is an independent researcher who has assisted us. She's no way associated with the Fire Asylum because, again, she is an independent researcher for authenticity. You can't pay the lady to do your research papers.
right.
She needs to show up and do them on her own.
Yeah,
But
you want
she
to have
wrote
an
a book.
independent opinion, sure.
Yeah, she wrote a book called Flow Based Decision Making. And when her and I met at a class called Axioms of Leadership, which is another wonderful whole sidebar we can go into for hours down in Georgia, run by Mo Baxter, we had met at that class. And a mutual friend of ours introduced us and says, Marty, Judy, Marty, you two just need to sit down and start talking. And we sit down and talk for like the next 6 or 7 hours straight. And she had all this wonderful research, and I had this wonderful training model, and it married up into a really cool program where one really fed the other nicely. Um, Dr. Glicksmith has since written a book called Flow Based Decision Making, and it's based on fire department experiences only. And for full disclosure, she has no association with the fire service. she simply, when she did her dissertation to get her doctorate, she wanted to study how firemen made decisions and why, because she thought we made really good decisions under stress. And so she started studying it, and she did a wonderful job of actually showing the actual research of the training program I was coming at from my end, and that's where the real meat and potatoes of the program got pushed forward to the next level.
So, I mean, that obviously lends the credibility to the program because it's not, you have the science behind it. You have I don't want to say, I guess, the pedigree behind it, if you will, but
Right.
you have the life experience and she has the science behind it. And like you said, it makes a perfect marriage. So Fire Asylum,
Yes.
where is it? And what exactly, like, give me like a quick, like, a bridge for, like, if we were standing in an elevator and we were going to the 20th floor and we have like a few minutes to talk, I want you to tell me what is it, exactly what the program entails and where it is and how people can access.
Cool. Okay. The elevator pitch. Right now, I live outside Dallas, Texas, out in the country, and that's where I physically live, and that's often referred to as the Fire Asylum. The location that we use to do the actual training in is in a little town called Moundsville, West Virginia. And I know everybody just goes, where, what, and why. Well, where is up at the upper part next to the Ohio River, right on the Ohio border with West Virginia. The why is that I needed an environment that fit the training style that we were going to do, and what we had to do was take firemen out of their comfort zone, because that's where the real training takes place. Now we can produce this training at your training field, and we will get really good results, no doubt about it. We've done it many times, but we get phenomenal results when Steven gets on an airplane, he flies out to Pittsburgh, gets in a rental car, drives into Moundsville, West Virginia, because now he's committed and he wants to show up, and he's in an environment that he's not used to. And what you pull up to is a 100-year-old retired state penitentiary that is just over 4 million square feet, and it's a playground.
Wow,
And
firefighters playground.
it's a firefighter's playground. It is an actual training facility. I know people look at it from the outside and go, "You want us to go play in an old abandoned building?" Cool. That's not true. It is actually a fully functioning fire training ground. The only thing we can't actually do on the premises is live fire, uh, for their historical code with it, because it is a historical protected building. Um, but we do have everything else we can do there. It has all the training props, everything we need to do, modern classrooms, the whole shebang. The infrastructure's in place. In fact, the state and fire and state police of West Virginia train there quite often, and the entire prison system of West Virginia trains there, doing their mock riots and extractions and all that kind of stuff. So it's really adapted well for training. So that is the where. What you do there is when we pull up, we have what's called Masters of the Mayhem course. And Masters of the Mayhem is a class that's designed for the students to just drive the wheels off of it, and we hope you do. We hope you just break the training program down, eat it up, throw it back at us, spit it around, and go. And basically, you show up at whatever the tour dates are that we're doing, or the class dates are that we're doing for that particular class. Like the fall class is coming up is September 5th and 6th. Still a few seats open if somebody wants to jump in. Um, on the 5th, you show up at 8:01 a.m. The timing is very important. The class will start at 8:01 in the morning. You will pull up out front of the prison. You'll be met by what's called the field whip, and his name describes him quite effectively, because he's going to be the guy that drives you all day long. And from there, we put the foot on the foot feed, and you go for the next 25 hours straight. Class ends at 9:03 the next morning.
Oh wow, so this is a full, I mean, there's no like going to dinner and getting no going to dinner and partying the night in between classes or anything.
No.
Okay.
Now, with that said, we also, for your class tuition, you're given a very nice room in a cabin up on the mountain overlook. It's a beautiful, beautiful town, by the way. Beautiful mountainous town. There's this really nice private. It looks to be, always reminds me of a state park, but it's in private hands. But that kind of state park vibe, if you know what I'm saying.
Sure.
And your class tuition, which is only $450, by the way, it's the cheapest one going in the fire service. Um, Includes a 3-night stay at the cabin up in the woods. So you have the cabin the night before the class. Of course, the day of the class, you're staying at the prison with us, and then the next day, the cabin is still rented for you, so you can go back, sleep, rest, recuperate, whatever you need to do before you get on the road. or we make sure you get back to the airport if you need to fly out that next afternoon. But it does include a 3-night stay at the cabin. We do suggest that drinking heavily, because it's not a part of your night before the class, because we're going to go for 25 straight hours the next day. Now, that sounds pretty daunting to a lot of people, right? Like a 25-hour class. We're literally asking you for 24 hours plus 1 extra hour, same shift you put in at the fire station.
So, and I mean, it sounds, and hearing it, it sounds very. I think you and I talked when we first got to have our first phone talk. Was that it's very like crucible based, like marine style. Like you're gonna go until you
Well,
drop almost.
no, yeah, I think that's the general vibe that people can kind of get from it. But no, it is not. It is not really based that way. The fire asylum is really um, designed for the individual's experience. So the guy standing next to you may be a CrossFit junkie, right? And then you may be more like me. You may have a little bit of the old cookie around the waist, because you eat cookies every night and drink a little milk and that sort of thing. And your stopping point may be way short of his, because it is a very individualized experience. And what I mean by that is there's 2 phases to it throughout. Well, there's several things we do throughout the day, but the 2 big main phases is a part of the course called the grinder, and it's aptly named. And every student will start in the grinder and they'll end in the grinder, and they're out there as a group. Now, as that group is progressing through their day, um, myself and another instructor pull people individually out of that group, and we actually put them into what's called Division 2, which is the upstairs of it, and that's where you're actually in the fire asylum with us one-on-one, and it becomes a very individualized experience. So yes, it does sound very crucible based, but I don't want people to think that if I can't perform for 20 straight hours, I can't go to this
Okay.
class, because that's not true. If you can perform for 1 hour, guess what? That's what you got. And we're going to get you to, because this is about teaching you your personal limits under stress, under physical strain and exhaustion and fatigue. And if that you hit that in an hour, that's fine, because you need to learn that. And you need to learn what your mind and your brain is doing there. And then we work on submitting that training model of the dopamine glutamate cycle into the brain, letting you repeat it, and do it again. So that's what you're there to learn. Now, let's go over what the typical day looks like. So now everybody won't be so scared of it. When I say the foot gets put on the foot feet and we go, you're not doing jumping jacks. You're not running around the block. You're not doing this. That's the first part of the day is you're going to sit in the class for about 3 hours. So you have a full understanding about what we're getting ready to go do for hands-on training. We explain everything in detail. There's nothing left to chance. If you don't pick up the information, it's not because we're not laying it down, if that makes sense, because we want you to learn. You're here to learn. So that's the first part of the morning. So it's just like going to work. You have a little briefing in the morning. Well, we have kind of an extended briefing. So we make sure you understand what's going on. We have a lunch break. You're fed. Part of your tuition is all the food that day. Trust me when I tell you, if you leave our class hungry, it's because you're not taking the food. Okay, because there's food available throughout the day, because we're going to keep you on your feet a lot, so we want to make sure you're fed, hydrated, all that stuff. There's helpers at the class that are not firefighters, and simply their job is when you come out of an evolution, they stick water in front of your face, peanut butter, cracker, whatever you want. We keep sticking in front of your face all day long. So there's that. So we have a lunch. Now, it's important for students to understand everything we do once class starts at 8:01 is in play, including food. So they have to be paying attention, because we're always teaching. That's why I say the class goes for 25 straight hours. If we're sitting down eating, we're teaching. You got to pay attention.
Yeah.
We're dropping little nuggets in the bucket for how the day is going to unfold if you're paying attention. And the reason we do that is because we're getting the brain receptive to learning. And it's just like at the fire service, something's always going on. You got to keep your eyes open. So anyway, we go through lunch. After lunch, the students actually help us assemble their own training field. And there's a part to that is very beneficial for them. They need to learn and understand the props that we're getting ready to put them through for hours at a time. So it's a work exercise between instructors and students, and we help them assemble the grinder. They don't assemble the Division 2. Division 2 remains a mystery till they stick their nose off in it. So after that, we start the grinder up and we start running guys through it. It's very, very detailed air pack oriented. You will learn to love or hate air packs by the time you leave a fire asylum class. And that's for one simple reason: if the brain's ever concerned about breathing, all of the things go out the window. It doesn't matter what your body's doing. If it can't breathe, all other stress is trumped. So we want to make sure students are extraordinarily comfortable with working air packs, and we do a lot of it in the grinder.
And do you provide those for them or?
Yes, we use Scott air packs, and
Okay.
we have those available with face masks. We actually encourage them to bring their own, like some of them that are driving in and stuff can bring their own air packs because we really want them using air packs that they're going to go use at work.
Right. That
But
makes
in the
sense.
event that they can't, we do have them available. Um, so, and like I said, as that day goes on, we may or may not start pulling students up to Division 2 early, just depending on what we're seeing people hitting their personal breaking points, because the Division 2 is about working within that personal breaking point. Um, and then, at some point in the evening, supper time comes around. Supper time is followed by, if you're so inclined, a nice cigar talk. We relax, we chat, but we're still teaching, we're still training, we're still working. Um, After dinner, we hit everything hard again, and that's going to operate and go until I always put somebody else in command of my class because that way I'm free to teach. Until the command looks at things and he says, okay, everybody's kind of hitting a collective shutdown point. So somewhere one or two-ish, three-ish in the morning, the whole fire field goes dormant and everybody gets a little bit of sleep. When command is ready, he will sound the alarm, and at 4 a.m. the foot gets put on the foot feed till you leave about 9, and we
Wow.
go through it. And that way they're learning to work right within the actual wheelhouse of firefighters. Tired, fatigued. The place where we work and where skill sets drop off really, really fast. And what we see there is so much personal discovery, so much personal growth, and I can't even tell you the things you hear at 5 o'clock in the morning in Division 2 have nothing to do with the fire service, but it had everything to do with holding that person back in life, which in turn inhibits their skill sets. And when they discover those moments and they're allowed to express them in a place of asylum, then you see them really jump forward in amazing, amazing ways. And that's pretty much the class. And I know this went way over an elevator pitch, but let's just pretend you got
That's
off on the floor with me because it was so interesting and we talked some more.
no, I'll tell you, man, Marty. I told you, or I think we might have talked about it before. I went to fire school back in, I believe it was 2002 or so, and
Right,
I learned that I wasn't a firefighter because I didn't like I got very claustrophobic. I didn't like heights, but I went
right.
through it and I learned that it wasn't for me. But I got to tell you, hearing you describe it makes me want to come down and take it myself because.
Well, and I think you should. I've worked with a number, and just for context, I'm 6'7", 300 pounds. So anybody else that gets stuck in props, just think about how I get stuck in a prop with an air pack on. I've been stuck in many props and I've been there myself. And the key thing to remember about coming to a class like this, and there's other wonderful stress-based trainers out there doing their classes too. So it's any of them that you attend, the Georgia Flames, the smoke diver programs, you know, any of these other guys that are doing these kind of crucible-based academia or tougher than nut classes or whatever. A thing to remember is that we've all been exactly where you're at, and that's why the instructors are there because they want to help you get through it. I've been stuck on those props and panicked myself. I, for one, was never a truckie. Why? Because I did not like being 75 feet off the ground. Now, you know what I'm saying? I was just like you. I didn't like the heights. So the key to it is that if we can teach your brain to reward you in that moment, despite your fear, you'll find amazing ways to get through that skill set anyway with accomplishment. And let's say that Stephen never wants to be a fireman, even though he comes to the Fire Asylum and you come and you do this great class and you say, man, that was great. I got over my fear of ladders, but I'm still not a fireman. But what you are is just better in life for coming through that skill set anyway. You're,
Well,
you're a better podcast host. You're a better whatever you're wanting to go accomplish, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah. And experience and learning different tools and things to put in my toolbox is invaluable. And, Marty, I really loved the program. I loved it the minute I got to hear about you and got to start researching you and what you were doing. And I'm just so, I love hearing people that have had their experiences and some of their darkest times and taken something and created something out of it instead of crawling in a hoarder or excuse me, crawling in a corner and crying pity me and woe me.
Right.
You decided to build something up instead of staying in the hole. And so let's plug it again because I know that sometimes the cost can be prohibitive for people. So I imagine, I'm guessing, and this could be me completely shooting off base, but I imagine that you also are willing to accept like donations for the program itself to maybe help scholarship people. I don't know if you do that, or what can we do to get your message out there to get more people in this training?
Well, we've got a couple venues. Let's just go over kind of the basic prices. The actual class in West Virginia is $450 per student, which includes the meals the day of the class and 3 nights in a cabin.
Right. Okay.
And of course, their travel time. And one of the reasons we did the cabins is because the hotels in the town are about $140 a night. So we had to cut that cost out for them. My ultimate goal is I'm always playing the long game. And my long game here is that one day I'm going to have a fire asylum where it won't be just our curriculum, it'll be other instructors, but students will be able to sign up and come for free. And that means that we have to find money from outside the fire service because the fire service can't support that.
Sure.
And not that they don't want to, they just physically can't. Budgets are what budgets are,
Yeah.
and money is tight. So there is a GoFundMe account, and that GoFundMe account is going directly to filming the fall class as a documentary. That documentary is being entered into several film festivals next year, and it's to get the word out and to get it to show people the media side of what we can deliver um, as a quality production to get money from them that will then in turn fund the firemen getting to come for free. As it stands now, that they're not allowed to. We just can't afford it. Not that they're not allowed to. We just can't afford it.
Okay.
This is a very instructor heavy course, as you can imagine, and guys have to take off work. And I've got a wonderful group of guys who literally pay out of pocket to show up and train in September. They're coming on their own and they're paying their own way and that sort of thing to make this thing happen. So the GoFundMe account's out there. It's GoFundMe/AsylumDoc. You can find that, and all the money there is going directly towards funding the production crew. It's not necessarily associated with funding the class itself. Um, one thing we didn't get to really cover in my background, we touched on it, is that I've worked in high-end personal security for a long time, and what I have access to call in some favors are wonderful directors and filmmakers. And believe me when I tell you, we have the director son up. His name is Hunter Carson. It's not a name you know right off the top of your head, but he's a director. But a very prevalent director, Hollywood royalty, and he's taken the project on pretty much pro bono. Wow. And then put the production staff in place. But we have to rent the equipment. We have to we logistically, we got to support them, to get these guys there to do the filming and do the work and then do the editing and all that stuff it takes to make it a real high quality show. So that's out there. $450 a student. We do allow scholarships and sponsorships if people want to sponsor a student to go through. In exchange for that, I have a very profound social media presence. The name and the brand, the Fire Asylum, took off like wildfire before I ever thought that it would. And we're able to exchange, if it's somebody that we can, in good conscience, partner up with and sponsor to promote what they're doing in exchange for putting a student through our class for free, we're happy to pursue that as well. Like a Scott Airpack or, your podcast, Don Prince and his work down in Florida with PTSD and what he's got up and running. The other we have is the Veterans Restorative Care Center, which is a PTSD oriented training program for veterans returning from war. They sponsored a student for this class. We'll be running commercials for them on social media, that sort of thing. So we're happy to explore those if those opportunities arise. They can feel free to contact me through fireasylum.com. There's a contact me spot, and I'd be happy to explore that with anybody.
Well, I told you when I first met you, obviously we haven't met yet, but I hope we do one day. I told you when we first did our phone meeting is that I wanted to do anything I can do, to use this vehicle as an opportunity to get the word out and get support and get people in the class. So, we're in the show notes of the show. We're going to be putting the website. We're going to have you have your site, link that back on our site, and, we'll work together on this because
definitely. I certainly appreciate that. This was a wonderful opportunity for me to be able to tell my personal story, so people understand who I am and where I come from. So I really appreciate that.
Oh yeah, I mean, the honor is all mine. I said to anybody who asks me about this show is not about me at all. This show is about helping people, helping our audience's families have a quality life. And if anybody who I get a chance to have on the show that is pursuing that same mission, has the same goal in mind, we all win. That's how I look at it.
Exactly. That's the way surround yourself with successful people. Success finds you.
That's
So
that's correct. And listen, Marty, I know we're out of time now, but I wanted to just thank you again, Marty Mayes from the Fire Asylum. What is it? And just say it again. It's fireasylum.com.org. What was it again?
fireasylum.com. ASYLUM, like an insane asylum, but fireasylum.com.
Okay, fireasylum.com. You could also find him on Facebook. He's got a huge following on there. I know that for a fact. So thanks a lot, Marty. Again, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Stephen. It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You got it, man. Thanks a lot, and everybody, we'll see you on the next episode. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. I really hope it'll help you or your loved one. If you get a chance, I really would appreciate it if you could head over to iTunes and Apple Podcasts and leave a review. It will really help me out in many ways. Take care, everyone, and remember, you are not alone in your struggle.
I want to give a big shout out to one of our supporters, the Addictions Academy. The Addictions Academy is the world's foremost accredited trainer of addiction coaches, addiction counselors, interventionists, and international master addiction coaches, offering on-site training at your rehab or facility, live virtual classroom webinars, or on-demand classes covering an extensive availability of courses and certifications. Check them out at theaddictionsacademy.com or call Dr. Callie Estes and her team at 1-800-706-0318.
Thanks for listening to Rescue the Rescuer. For show notes and more, head on over to rescuetherescuer.com.
We are a part of the Mental Health News Radio Network.com. This show is produced by James Healy of RecoveryInnovators.com. If you have a message and want to start a show of your own, contact him and let him know that we sent you.